live action roleplay. It's a badass hobby of thousands of people all over the world. And if you want to start with LARP too, your first step is to choose a setting that interests you. So today I will tell you everything you need to know about the 6 biggest LARP genres right after our little fancy intro. If this is the first time you ever hear about LARP, you might want to check out this video first. It explains all the basics you need to know. But even if you have LARP before, you have most likely not seen all the exciting possibilities yet. Because just like with books or with movies, there are so many different genres in LARP, it will blow your mind. In this video, I tried to put them into the most important categories that I personally know of. If your community has different categories, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. Alright, so here are my 6 biggest LARP genres. Number 1, medieval fantasy. Medieval fantasy is probably the most popular LARP genre out there. And it's what most people first think about when they hear of LARP. This genre will remind you of fantasy worlds like Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, or The Witcher. I call this genre medieval fantasy because it's often inspired by the European Middle Ages. So you'll see people in metal and leather armors carrying swords, axes, or pole weapons. And just like back in the day, there will be fireplaces instead of electricity and human messengers instead of mobile phones. There's usually no use of modern technology in the game. And of course, there's also the element of fantasy. So at these LARP events, you might see orcs, elves, dwarves, and all kinds of fantastic monsters. There's also usually some form of magic. Depending on the rules, your LARP character could use magic to heal, to fight, or in rituals. And your opponents can use magic as well. This is what it can look like if you get hit by a powerful spell of an NPC at a German LARP event. There are high fantasy LARPs and low fantasy LARPs, depending on the amount of, well, fantasy elements. LARPs are held all over the world and range from just a handful of players somewhere in the woods to a couple of thousand attendees. To give you a little overview, here are the 3 biggest medieval fantasy LARPs in the world. And on place number 3, with around 4,000 players, is Bicoline in Canada. It has the most beautiful campground I have ever seen. More than 200 houses are built right into the Canadian woods. Bicoline runs for an entire week and ticket costs on average around €200. The second biggest medieval fantasy LARP is Drachenfest in Germany. At Drachenfest, you are part of one of these huge camps who all compete against each other. Around 5,000 players go to the event every year to roleplay, solve quests, and fight huge battles. There are a lot of international players from many different countries, so you will feel right at home. Tickets to the 5-day event cost around €170 on average. And the biggest medieval fantasy LARP in the world is Conquest of Mythodea in Germany. Every year in August, almost 10,000 LARPers meet close to Hanover in the north of Germany. I have been going to Conquest of Mythodea for 13 years now, and it's still one of my favorite LARPs ever. It's just incredible to fight against the world's biggest NPC army. It's also a great place for intense roleplay and some of the best in-game parties I've ever been to. Tickets for Conquest of Mythodea cost around €200 for the entire 5-day event. I have made detailed videos about all 3 of these events, and you can find them on my YouTube channel, Sunny's Adventures. It would mean the world to me if you hit the subscribe button and support our work. Okay, now let's change outfits, okay? The second LARP genre is Post-Apocalyptic LARP. Can you imagine what this setting is all about? Post-apocalypse? Yes, it's literally the world after an apocalypse. In these settings, the world as we know it has ended because of some form of catastrophe, like an invasion of zombies, or nuclear fallout, or an alien attack. Or the outbreak of a virus that leads to a global pandemic. No, that's way too unrealistic. Anyways, the inspirations for Postapo Larp events reach from movies like Mad Max and series like The Walking Dead to video games like Fallout. Depending on the story, you might see people dressed in dystopian uniforms or in wasteland costumes. Or you might run into mutants. The motto of Postapo Larp outfits is usually, more dirt is more good. And in roleplay, it's all about survival in a tough environment. Your LARP character is probably fighting back some form of deadly threat, so yeah, it's not all easy peasy lemon squeezy. The coolest thing is that in this genre you can absolutely use modern technology. To me, that makes it much more easier to immerse myself and really believe that everything is real. For example, at the Postapo Larp that I go to, we use radios to communicate within our LARP group over long distances. And at many events, you will see people driving around in old cars with huge LARP machine guns on top of it, shooting their opponents. There are even motorcycles and vehicles that look a lot like tanks. Speaking of battle, in Postapo Larp, so-called Nerf blasters are pretty common as weapons. People transform them from these harmless children's toys to really badass looking modified guns. And you also have often airsoft blasters like these ones here, which obviously means that you then need to wear protective glasses for safety. Now, where do you find post-apocalyptic LARP events? Well, here's a quick overview over 3 fairly big ones around the world. The first one is Bloodspend Reloaded in Sweden. This Postapo Larp has around 200 participants and is set in a dystopian future. A devastating war has turned our planet into a radioactive wasteland. Bloodspend Reloaded happens every year in September at a location a few hours west of Stockholm. The tickets cost around €70 for 3 days and the event looks simply amazing. Our second example is Fallen in Germany. Around 700 players attend this LARP every year. In the 1950s, a nuclear fallout has ended the world as we know it. So all clothes you see at Fallen are still inspired by that period. The location is a former military base around 2 hours of Berlin. Tickets are on average around €150 for 4 days. And our third example is Old Town in Poland. Now this is Europe's biggest Postapo Larp event with around 1,000 players. It's held at an abandoned airport close to Stargard in Poland. Old Town is set in a world after a nuclear war and it allows airsoft and Nerf weapons. Even though it is a LARP event, it also has festival elements, so you can watch music concerts or go to parties. Tickets are on average around €65 for 4 days. If you want to know more about the genre of post-apocalypse, I can recommend the YouTube channel of my friend Nuclear Snail Studios. He makes badass crafting videos and has the Nuclear Snail community group on Facebook where you can ask all kinds of questions. But now, it's time to change my outfit again. Ready? Number 3, Vampire LARP. This is still one of the most widespread LARP settings in the entire world, mainly because Vampire the Masquerade and Vampire the Requiem are popular pen and paper role-playing games. Vampire LARP events are often set in modern times, so they don't necessarily need fancy medieval locations. I know many people who just play it somewhere in a normal house with their clan. This genre is all about diplomacy, power games and conspiracies. Almost everyone there plays a vampire, so don't think of it as humans versus vampires, but more of an interaction between different vampire clans. If you are interested in playing a powerful fantasy race that is basically immortal and therefore has their very own set of problems, then Vampire LARP could be your thing. To give you an example for an event, check out Camarilla Italia. Around 250 members in 8 cities all over Italy play with this LARP association. Their Vampire LARP events happen every month in cities like Bologna or Milano. Okay, ready for the next LARP genre? Number 4, Historical LARP. LARPs don't have to be all about fantasy and magic. They can also play in historically inspired settings. Imagine being in the Roaring '20s, the Wild West, or on a submarine in war times. In this setting, you can catch a glimpse into a time period that has actually existed. So you might be a cowboy having a shootout, or you are at a fancy dinner in an Edwardian mansion, or you experience the late European Middle Ages. Cool, right? However, this is still LARP and not reenactment. So you will still create a fictional LARP character and you will roleplay a fictional storyline. You will not reenact an actual historical event. To give you a better idea, here are some examples for historical LARP events. Number 1. Legion Siberian Story in the Czech Republic. Siberian Story is an international LARP event that runs every year in the Czech Republic. It is set in 1918 and deals with the topic of the Russian Civil War. It's both physically and mentally demanding. Tickets cost around €260 and include everything from LARP costumes to food. Number 2. Against All Flags in Italy. Ready for 4 days on a historical ship? Then check out this pirate LARP by the Italian organizers Terre Spezzate. It's set in a fictional version of the 1600s and is played in English. Tickets cost around €530 and include food and accommodation on the ship. And number 3 is the Tournai vom Einhorn in Germany. Up to 250 people attend this historical LARP every 2 years. It is set in the 1400s in medieval Germany and tickets cost around €120. Okay, ready for the next LARP genre? Number 5, Sci-Fi LARP. If you like science fiction in all its exciting forms, then Sci-Fi LARP might be just your thing. This genre is influenced by realms like Star Wars, Warhammer 40k or Cyberpunk 2077. You might fight with airsoft weapons, with Nerf blasters or even lightsabers. And you could absolutely fly a spaceship like this one from LARP Gladiator in Israel. Isn't that awesome? Sci-Fi LARP includes subgenres like cyberpunk and steampunk and is often set in dystopian worlds. Events are generally harder to find, but here's a great example. At 42K LARP in Germany, you are part of these Imperial Guards fighting against the hordes of chaos. Tickets for this airsoft LARP event cost around €170 on average. Okay, ready for the last LARP genre? Number 6. Horror and Mystery LARP. Yeah, so this is one of the more unusual LARP genres. Inspiration for these LARPs can be anything from the Tales of Cthulhu to detective stories like Sherlock Holmes and all kinds of thrillers and horror movies. These LARP events often play with the concepts of fear and suspense. So you could be spooked by ghosts or zombies, or you're trying to solve a murder case. One example of a LARP event in this genre is Nebel über Innsmouth in Germany. It's inspired by the world of H.P. Lovecraft and set in the 1920s. A mysterious case has drawn your LARP character into this beautiful location. Tickets cost around €350 and include food for 3 days. Okay, now let's switch into something more comfortable, okay? Whew, better! So here's the thing, right? Many LARP events are hard to put into just one category, like the Post-Apocalyptic Sci-Fi LARP Prim in Germany, or like Harry Potter LARPs. They play in modern times, right? But in a parallel world full of magic. An example for these events would be College of Wizardry in Poland. It plays in an incredible castle and is the largest immersive magic school in the world. Tickets for the 4-day events cost around €700 and include all meals, accommodation in the castle, and a robe. Now, if you are hooked and you want to find any type of LARP in your area, simply search for LARP and your country or city on Google or on Facebook. Oh, and if you are already a LARPer, please comment below and tell people about your local LARP events or your LARP group. It will help so many people. Alright guys, see you in the next video.